What inspired me when I was 12 years old, I met Mr. Electrical, and from his electric chair, he touched me with his sword, and he said, "Live forever." The next day, I went to see him, and he introduced me to all of his friends behind the scenes. And the first person he introduced me to was the Illustrated Man. I didn't call him that. At the age of 12, he was a tattooed man. But when I wrote, when I was 30 years old, about the tattooed man, I changed his name to the Illustrated Man. And he became the wonderful image on which I could put all of my short stories. And I told this idea to Doubleday, and they bought the idea because I had not created The Illustrated Man as a book at that time. So it came about because Mr. Electrico introduced me to him, and I remembered him 25 years later.
That was a Labor Day weekend, 1932. And Ray Bradbury was not only introduced to the tattooed man at that point, but also Seal Boy, the bearded woman, Skeleton Man. I mean, to think of 12-year-old Ray Bradbury surrounded by the carnival freaks is a pretty remarkable image down on the lakeshore of Lake Michigan in Waukegan, Illinois. It's a really, and you know, he went on. I mean, the nature of, the essence of carnival has been so central to so much of his canon. Of course, with Something Wicked This Way Comes, that I think that experience extends even beyond the seminal classic Illustrated Man and really permeates the entirety of his canon completely. That one-day experience on Labor Day, 1932.
Excellent. Next question.
Yes, Mr. Bradbury, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much. As president of our city's educational foundation, I can tell you that it's a very interesting idea, and we raise money and help fund the schools, so maybe that's something I can help start in our city, in California here, and maybe we'll call it the Ray Bradbury Fund. So thank you very much. My question is this: in a lot of your stories, you deal with the themes, or they at least end up with hope for society, which is a common theme in science fiction, but I think it really shows through in your work. And I just kind of want to know, especially like my favorite story, the Toynbee Convector, what sort of, where do you sort of get your inspiration for hope?
Many of your stories are filled with hope. Where do you get your inspiration from stories involving hope? That must have been a very good question.
Well, and again, the specific example to help narrow that down was the Toynbee Convector.
The Toynbee Convector particularly impressed you.
Look,
You're taking notes, by the way.
you just search for things. I love being alive. I've never changed. I don't know how many of you know I remember being born. How many people do you know like that? I remember being in the womb. There's all red light around me. And then I discovered years later I was a 10-month baby. I was in the womb for 10 months. I developed my seeing and my hearing. And when I burst forth, I yelled. I could hear myself yelling. And many years later, when my first baby was born, I called my mother and I said, "How many days did you suckle me?" She said, 3 days. I said, "I remember the flavor." I said, "How many days after I was born was I circumcised?" She said, 5 days. I said, "It wasn't at home, was it?" "No." "It wasn't at the hospital?" "No." "Did my father bundle me up and walk me down into the center of the city and walk up some stairs with me and put me on a table? And did a man in white bend over me with something bright in his hand?" And then there was the pain, and that was the moment of circumcision on my 5th day after being born. And that's the way it happened. So I have total recall of all of my life, and that's really being in love. I saw my first movie when I was 3 years old, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, with Lon Chaney. What a memory. My God, what a great film. I didn't see it again till I was 17. I went to see it with some friends, and on the way in, I said, I remember this film. They said, what do you mean? When did you see it? I said, I was 3 years old. They said, you can't remember this film. I said, there's this scene, and this scene, and this scene. And then we went in and saw it, and there the goddamn thing was. So don't talk to me about home. I love life. I love every bit of life. It's been a full, wonderful, glorious adventure for me. I'm looking for tomorrow too. I'm looking for the next 15 years. I'm going to make it to be 100, so help me God.
If I could add something directly to answer the gentleman's question, along with Ray's beautiful, I think it's inspiration there. There was one night we were driving around in Los Angeles in his limousine, and he told me that the Toynbee Convector was actually one of his very favorite short stories. And I think there's a reason for this. And that's an interesting admission from him, because he often doesn't like to field what is your favorite story or what is your favorite book. Because his response is, they're all my children and you can't pick a favorite among your children. But he told me one night that the Toynbee Convector was a favorite of his, and I think because of this very nature, Ray Bradbury does not believe in hope on its own merits. He maintains that hope is a false word, that there is no hope without action, that you must act in order to have hope. If you act upon what you truly hope for, then it will become true. And the Toynbee Convector is exactly that premise. It's based upon this man acting upon his own hope for the future.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Stan. And I want to be the first person to congratulate Ray Bradbury on his 100th birthday.